there, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. Executive producer Huck is in the office. She came in to say hello for class number 2 on UFOs. Can you shake? Oh, that's a good girl. That's a good girl. Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks for being here. So, again, class number 2 on UFOs, and this is going to be a good one. We're going to focus on this class on historical UFOs and military interaction. This is important. And why is it important? Because I want you to think about how many times in your life have there been military interactions with UFOs that you know about? Probably not many. Well, I'm going to inform you of some that will blow your socks off. A couple of things. I always like to start with a current event. And this is current, March 26, 2023. Oh, before I get going, I got to remind you. I know that a lot of you were with us for the Bigfoot classes. The final's going to be next week. I hope you're studying. Next Thursday, final Bigfoot class. Be there. Okay. Now the UFO. This article titled "Nearly six decades after the seminal Montana UFO incidents, Air Force vets briefed the Pentagon." Published March 26, 2023. On the night of March 24th, 1967, Robert Salas was a 26-year-old U.S. Air Force lieutenant cocooned 20 meters below the Montana prairie, overseeing weaponry that could obliterate millions. "I felt we were under attack," said Salas in a phone interview from his home near Ventura, California, but the assailants, he said, weren't any Cold War foes. Soviet technology couldn't have abruptly disabled the missile's guidance and control systems, which is what happened that night. You would have had to have sent individual signals to each missile, and within seconds, we had no power, Salas, 82, said. "This had never happened before and have nothing that could do that now." Salas said that what's transpired above his concrete and steel bunker holds the answers, or at least one of them. Just moments before the system's failure, a non-commissioned security officer on the surface made a series of increasingly frenzied phone calls to Salas, describing an oval-shaped form within pulsating, glowing red lights and orange lights hovering over the installation. The NCO had also described the approach of the silent object, which was making unusual controlled maneuvers, such as flying very fast, coming to a dead stop, then traversing course and making 90-degree turns. He was screaming on the phone, terrified. I told him to secure the facility at all costs. Responding to his orders, other security guards scrambled to other launch sites in the complex, only to see glowing objects hovering above them. It was reported they lost radio contact with flight security controller and were shaken by the experience, Salas said. Less than a minute after the pulsating object had arrived over his launch control center, it had quickly departed, the U.S. Air Force veteran said. The dumbfounded officer soon found himself in a meeting with his squadron commander and special investigations officer and was told the incident didn't involve any kind of Air Force exercise. This happened, folks. This happened. UFOs came in over an Air Force base just outside of Great Falls, Montana, and disabled all of the flight control systems for our nuclear missiles. I don't know if there's some people out there who don't believe this. This was part of a disclosure project that Air Force officers came forward and all testified, and then they brought forth documents proving it happened. Now, what's kind of funny about this And I'm going to get to more of this story in a second. But when I did my movie, Missing 411, The UFO Connection, even as late as last week, I got comments on my video for the UFO Connection saying, Paulides jumped the shark. What an idiot. He's talking garbage. He's lost his mind. What's wrong with these people? I'm reporting to you what Air Force officers have said. If you can't believe them, the men that work these flight control systems under the highest regulated security in the world, if you can't believe what they're saying, then you can't believe anything. Think about this. So some people want to make fun of me because I'm reporting what others have said. I've never stated my beliefs. I'm reporting what they've stated. Now let's go on with the same story. Salas said that he also told to never speak of the incident as it was now classified. I signed a non-disclosure agreement. I didn't start talking about it until 96, he said. He recalls at that time in 67 his colleague, Colonel Fred Mywald, telling him that there had been an earlier similar incident at Malmstrom, but only discovered decades later it had occurred just 8 days before his own experience. Malmstrom Air Force Base. He also learned that 10 ICBMs had been disabled under identical circumstances September 66 at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. Within a span of 6 months, we lost 30 nuclear missiles to UFOs, said Salas, who provided an Air Force document declassified in 96 regarding the March 16th incident at Malmstrom, east of Great Falls. This is what I'm telling you. This happened. If you don't want to hear it, then just switch off. But if you're mad because I'm talking about this, I don't get that. You want to attack the source? The officers that worked inside the facilities? That found the documents that prove their point? March 1767, communication contains clear expressions of alarm and bewilderment. All 10 missiles in echo flight at Malmstrom's strategic alert went within 10 seconds of each other at raids. The fact that no apparent reason for the loss of 10 missiles can be readily identified cause for grave concern at this headquarters. During his remaining 2 years on missile duty at Malmstrom, Salas said he never once heard the incidents mentioned, but added he rebuffed security officers' witnesses' agitated pleas to discuss March 24th soon after it happened, out of fear of breaching an order. But with the release years later of U.S. Navy videos of pilots' encounters with UFOs and the trickle of other evidence, that taboo has thawed. And the U.S. Department of Defense created the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which Salas describes as a conduit for whistleblowers. The mission of the AARO will be to synchronize efforts across the Department of Defense. On February 15th, Salas said for nearly 2 hours he briefed by phone the AARO official on his 67 experience. He's convinced the military and government have covered up incidents it's all known for too long. It is a milestone for me because I've never told my story to the government office, he added. I went through all the details extensively. It shows they're at least open to listening. Salas said he provided AARO with 22 pieces of documentary evidence, including written notes and a video. Affidavits signed by several other officers 13 years ago attest to the occurrences at Minot and in Montana, which extended over months and whose frequency even necessitated special UFO briefings. Patrick Madonna was an Air Force first class doing surveying work at launch sites at Malmstrom in September 66 when he says a brilliantly lit craft 20 meters in diameter hovered 100 meters above them. It seemed to have pulsating lights going around it and white light under the center looking down into the silo. There was no wind, there was no noise. He told the National Press Club this in Washington, D.C. in September 2010. From this dead stop, it shoots off to the east, just like now you see it, now you don't. A police officer his team encountered soon after the sighting, he said, told them there had been more than 20 UFO sightings in that greater area that night. Now, in the movie, we released documents from Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming, very near the Higdon incident in the movie. Now, when Carl Higdon explained that he was abducted, that occurred October 25th, 1974. Every incident I've talked to you about so far in this video was top secret. Nobody knew about them. Now I reference you this. This is Headquarters 90th Strategic Missile Wing, U.S. Air Force, Warren Air Force Base, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Reference AFR 202. Francis E. Warren Air Force Base is located in an area which was recently experienced a considerable number of reports pertaining to unidentified flying objects. On the night of 31st of July 65, several civilians of Cheyenne, Wyoming reported to the local radio station various objects, generally with red and green flashing lights. They were relayed to the Francis E. Warren Command Post. All missile sites were immediately contacted and alerted to be on the watch for the objects. As a result, the following number of sightings were reported during the following 3 nights at Warren. July 31st, 75 objects were observed by 70 base personnel. August 1st, 29 objects observed by 27 base personnel. 2nd of August, 44 objects observed by 46 personnel. Reported objects are mostly round, although there are reports of oval, cigar-shaped, and pencil-shaped, or merely a light source. Reported sizes vary from of a pinhead to a nickel when seen by the naked eye, and from the size of a pea to a $50 when seen through binoculars. Where sightings involved more than one object, V-shaped, echelon, cross, box, and tail-shaped formations were reported. On August 1st, there was one daytime report from a civilian source in Cheyenne of an oblong object tumbling through the sky in the distance, becoming 2 objects before disappearing in separate directions. No discernible features. Possible tails were reported on a few cases. There was no sound reported in association with any of the objects. All of the moving objects were to the northwest, north, and northeast of observational points. Description of course of objects. The early observations were somewhat accidental and perhaps incomplete in that the light and or movement caught the eye of the observer. Again, friends, these are UFOs observed over Warren Air Force Base in 1965, 9 years before the Carl Higdon incident. There is no way Carl knew about this. No way. So think about that. In the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, nowhere, Montana, nowhere, Minot, North Dakota, there are these clusters of UFO sightings around military installations. Said all reported observations occurred during the hours of darkness or near darkness, near dawn, beginning at approximately 5 a.m. on August 1st, 65, and continuing during similar periods for the following 2 nights. Most predominant sightings occurred after midnight. In most cases, observers were located in various Minuteman launch control facilities in the area north of Cheyenne, Wyoming, east through the Nebraska border, and southeast in Colorado. In a few instances, observers were roving security guards driving vehicles in the area. Most observers were young, 18 to 21 years old, Combat Defense Force airmen on duty in Minutemen flight areas. A few observers were young missile maintenance men, others were mature NCOs. All observers are considered to be reliable and intelligent. Only a few have aircraft experience, a few, if any, have prior experience in aerial or space phenomena. General comments. Due to a great number of the sightings, specific reports on each sighting are not to be forwarded. However, all reports are kept for reference. In several instances, sightings were verified by other observations from neighboring control centers. Due to length of duty hours and distances involved, many reports were taken by phone and somewhat sketchy. Personnel interviews where returning crews revealed more accurate information with sketches, diagrams, degrees of altitude, and general characteristics. Now, in the movie, I'm going to show you the report. This is the actual report that we cited in the movie. You can take a screenshot of it if you want and look at it. But it's a real Air Force document. So this happened in 65. Higdon's incident occurred in 74. Just west of Cheyenne, not very far. Also in Wyoming, Medicine Bow National Forest. You can look at it on a map. It's all in close proximity. All involve military. Article, July 17th, 74. The Star Phoenix, Saskatoon. Headlines, Ghost Ships Still Puzzle Experts at Missile Base. Huntsville, Alabama. Reuters. Experts at a missile base say they are puzzled about strange ghost ships picked up by powerful radar scanners in the Pacific during a tracking exercise. There's been little official comment on what the scientists found, but Major Dallas Van Hoos, the Army's base spokesman, confirmed that some unexplained aerial phenomena were observed last August. Scientists, many of whom are reluctant to be named in the interview because of general public skepticism concerning UFOs, say privately they have been unable to find an explanation for the ghost ships. We have never seen anything precisely like this before, said one ballistic missile defense expert who works for the Army agency here and is familiar with the advanced radar used to test missiles and warheads. Huntsville houses the Army's Ballistic Missile Defense System Command, which analyzes results of missile tests in the Atoll region of the Marshall Islands. Last August, the Air Force launched a Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missile from Vandenberg Air Force Base, that's in California, Southern California, aimed at the missile range in the atolls and used by the Army, Air Force, and Navy. When the ICBM was screaming toward the Pacific test site, it began its descent on a normal ballistic trajectory, scientists said. The nose cone had separated from the third stage of the missile and was entering the atmosphere at 22,000 feet a second. Radar scanners at the atoll and Mech Islands were tracking the nose cone routinely. At about 400,000 feet, the radar experts in the Pacific found that they were tracking an unidentified flying object next to the ICBM's nose cone. Radar picked up an inverted saucer-shaped object to the right and above the descending nose cone and watched it cross the warhead's trajectory to a point which was below and to the left of it before the Phantom disappeared. The ghost ship was described of being 10 feet high and 40 feet long. So far, none of the experts believe the ghost ship was a natural phenomenon caused by freak weather. Well, of course not. Of course not. I've tried through all of my research to not impart an opinion in the face of facts. Here's more. The Minot Daily News, Tuesday, December 6th, 1966. Minot, let you have a look at it here. It says Minot Launch Control Center saucers cited as one indication of outer space visitors. More than 3 months after it reportedly occurred, an unidentified flying object sighting in the Minot area has been blown up as the lead topic in an article entitled Are Flying Saucers Real?, which appears in the latest issue of Saturday Evening Post. The sighting says that the Post article occurred at Minot Air Force Base Minuteman Missile Launch Control Center on August 25th, 66. Base information officers continued such a report was made. It was never released in Minot, but was sent to Wright-Patterson Field in Ohio. Wright-Patterson. A lot of rumors about that place. The rumors is that various crash locations around the U.S., Wright-Patterson is the point where the supposed alien bodies were taken. The article by D.J. Allen Hynek identified the chairman of Northwestern University Astronomy Department and an Air Force consultant on flying objects. The Minot incident is detailed in this manner. Launch control officer who was an underground capsule discovered static was interfering with radio transmission. While he was attempting to clear the problem, personnel on the surface reported seeing a UFO with a red light high in the sky. At the same time, a radar crew picked up the object at an estimate 100,000 feet. Static stopped when the object climbed, the report maintains. After climbing, it began to swoop and dive, then apparently landed some distance away. Mission Control sent a strike team to check. When the team was 10 miles from the landing site, static disrupted radio contact with them. 5 to 8 minutes later, the glow diminished and the UFO took off. Another UFO was visually sighted and confirmed by radar. Yes, this is all what I believe 100% true. It goes on, it says later in the article, a second F-84 was sent aloft and directed toward the UFO, which still showed on radar. After several minutes, the pilot reported seeing an object with a light of varying intensity that alternated from white to green. While the pilot was pursuing the UFO, he noted that his gun sight light had flashed on, indicating that his plane's radar was picking up a target. The object was directly ahead of his aircraft, but at the slightly greater altitude, it then climbed rapidly. When the pilot saw he was hopelessly losing ground, he broke off the chase. As the object sped off to the north, Ellsworth notified the Spotters Control Center in Bismarck, 220 miles north, where a sergeant went out on the roof and saw the UFO. The Air Force had no planes in Bismarck that could be sent up to the UFO. Hynek says he investigated the case himself and was not convinced. The entire incident, in my opinion, had too much of an Alice in Wonderland flavor. Well, that's Hynek. His job was essentially to poo-poo any UFO sighting. But here a pilot saw it, flight control saw it, and Hynek's going to poo-poo it. Now we're going to switch gears. We're going to move off from North Dakota, from Wyoming, and from Montana. 3 locations. Montana, Wyoming, where all this happened. We're going to move from 3 Air Force bases and we're going to go to Michigan. One of the videos I made was about this case I'm going to talk to you about next. And I'll put the link up so you can watch the video I made about this specific incident. November 25th, 1953, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Light snow showers again hampered the search today for 2 Air Force officers missing since Monday night in an F-86 jet fighter over the rugged Kinawa Peninsula area. The Coast Guard cutter Woodrush reported that it still has found no sign of the flyers in their all-weather Scorpion jet. It was continuing the search in wintry Lake Superior. The officers were identified Tuesday as Lieutenant Felix Moncla, 26, Moroville, Oklahoma, and Second Lieutenant Robert R. Wilson, 22, from Ponca City, Oklahoma. Both were from Oklahoma. Canadian and U.S. Air Force planes scanned the snow-swept waters of the lake yesterday while police and conservation men searched the rugged coastline. The plane was last heard of Monday night when it radioed from somewhere over the lake. When it left Kinross Air Force Base south of here, it had about 2 hours of fuel aboard. Air Force spokesman at Truax Airfield, Madison, Wisconsin, who identified the flyers, said the plane was followed by radar until it merged with an unidentified object 70 miles north of Quinoa Point. Let me tell you something. These men, true heroes, pilot and co-pilot of that jet. They left on a wintry night, flew out over Lake Superior at the request of Canadian officials. Canada reported to the United States that they had a UFO flying from east to west over Lake Superior, and they had a jet scrambled. Mantle and Wilson took the job and took off. They left, they flew out over, and they were closing on the object as it was flying along. Radar had them close on the object. Boom. Both objects are gone. Scorpion was never found. Mantle and Wilson never found. Capital Times, November 24th, 1953. A second Truax Field F-89 Scorpion jet plane that was reported missing today with 2 occupants, even as searchers continued efforts to recover the bodies of 2 other flyers. This is a story that hardly anyone talks about. So as the first F-89 takes off after the UFO, a second F-89 was taking off in support from Wisconsin. Occupants of the second plane, which disappeared late Monday afternoon, again were Mantle and Wilson. Killed in the Wingra crash were First Lieutenant John Schmidt and Captain Glenn Collins, a radar observer, native of Del Rio, Texas. Lieutenant Henry W. Shoup, Truax base commander, said the jet interceptor involved in the crash had taken off from Kinross. Here's the pilots of the second plane that crashed and died. So 2 F-89s, same day, same mission, one disappears, one crashes. Of the 4 pilots, nobody is around to talk about it. Is that odd? Hope to shout that's odd. Now again, I'm going to leave that link for you down under the first comment, pinned comment, and you can watch a real detailed video I made about this case. Now, is that the only case in the United States where a military plane disappeared, crashed, or killed in relationship to UFO? No. This is January 9th, 1948. The newspaper was called the Evening Express. Headlines: Pilot is killed chasing saucer. 3 states report objects in the sky. Mysterious objects seen floating in the sky over Kentucky, Tennessee, and Ohio revives speculation about flying saucers today. The latest report on the phenomenon was at Wilmington, Ohio, where personnel at the Clinton County Air Base reported a flaming ball of red fire, which was seen for 35 minutes until it disappeared over the horizon. National Guard headquarters in Kentucky blamed the death of a pilot on a mysterious gleaming object which he was chasing. They said that pilot Thomas Mantle, flying without oxygen equipment, apparently flew too high, became unconscious, lost control of the plane. He crashed near Franklin, Kentucky. 2 pilots flying with Mantle turned back after they had climbed to 20,000 feet. A bright bulb-shaped object also was reported seen in Clarksville, Nashville, and Columbia, Tennessee, and at several points in southern Kentucky. Captain Mantle, 25 years old, he was a hero on the Allied invasion of Normandy, where he flew several missions. That's the hero right there. Now, can you imagine getting asked to scramble to chase UFO that you don't even know what it is? I can't even imagine it. And then people don't want to talk about the incident because they're afraid that they're going to be embarrassed by other people's ridicule and etc. Are you kidding me? 2 men disappear over Lake Superior. Please think about this. On radar, they see the point where the plane and the UFO intersect each other. So they know pretty much where it's at. So why hasn't our military gone out with side scan radar and recovered those bodies out there in the plane? Why? Why not? Because, friends, I'll tell you, I believe that the military doesn't believe they're out there. They have no idea where they're at. And that's concerning. They don't even want to talk about it. And other pilots don't want to. Now, within the last 15 years, the incidents of military pilots being involved with UFOs has become a public issue where it wasn't before. Now, what I just talked to you about were historical UFO military plane incidents. The more recent times, we'll talk about those in another show, another class. But remember something. I told you this before, I'll tell you it again. Several years ago, I was at a UFO conference, and an Air Force captain was talking about these military UFO incidents. And he said that several times when the military plane and the UFO would get close to each other, the plane would crash, people would die, or the plane would disappear. And he said each time this happened, the military planes were armed. And he said the military learned that if they want to play with these things, if they want to go learn with them, if they want to go film them, if they want to go follow them, they've got to do it unarmed. Now, I don't know if it's true. It's just what was said at this conference from an Air Force veteran. Do I believe it? I have no reason not to believe it. But if you think about how rudimentary our flying machines were in the 40s and 50s compared to how they are today, how fast we can fly today compared to how fast we could fly in the 40s and 50s, how maneuverable we are today, and how our planes can avoid radar detection today, it would seem as though that we should be able to keep up with them much better today than we could 60 years ago. But that's a little bit of a historical perspective on UFOs and military. Now let's talk about something regarding that historical aspect one more. Now, during the Cold War, there wasn't a lot of talk going on between Russia and the US. And the incidents that Russian pilots had with UFOs was a closely guarded secret, if they had any. There's also reports in Central America and South America of pilots in those countries also having interactions with UFOs. More lately, because of advancements with FLIR and radar and their ability to see them now where they couldn't see them before. In essence, many of the sightings today of UFOs by pilots aren't eye-to-object observations. They're looking at them through forward-looking infrared radar, FLIR, F-L-I-R. And FLIR is seeing a heated object out there so many 100 miles or so many miles away. Without that, objects probably wouldn't even be seen. Now, last week, I showed you a series of shapes of UFOs. And I wanted you to start getting acclimated to this because everybody tends to think of UFOs as your standard flying saucer. But that's not always the case. Now, this is a shape that you're going to see a lot. Now, this one was in Kingman, Arizona. And right around the perimeter of the middle, the widest portion of the craft, there almost appeared to be windows, which is odd. But that was 1953 in Kingman. Now we go to 1963 in Peralta, New Mexico. That looks almost like the Kingman craft. Kingman craft, Peralta. Kingman, Peralta. Very, very similar. The Peralta, New Mexico case, the bottom of the craft almost seems to be missing compared to the Kingman. Now, maybe it's just the way it was observed, but they look very similar to me. Garrettsville, Ohio. Very unusual craft. It's almost like the center of it was missing. But the perimeter of it, the widest point, again looks like Kingman. But the bottom looks wholly different. Could it be the somewhat same thing? Possibly. Now this one was a little different than what we've seen in the past. This is in Greece. Almost looks like there's some kind of fin sticking out the top. And the bottom segment looks like it could possibly contain some windows. Unusual. 1984, Buchanan, New York. Almost a triangular craft. Could be similar in design to what we had in the movie, Missing 411, the UFO Connection. Now the thickness of its front is different. And there's not the three lights with the bright light in the middle underneath. I've had people tell me that, Dave, keep an eye on UFOs that have three lights on the bottom and a light in the middle, because it's part of the system that keeps the aircraft in flight. The witnesses to this incident stated that they didn't hear anything, they didn't feel anything. It was like a completely quiet, dead sky. So the movement of what causes this to fly is complex, but there's a pattern on it. Now in this incident, look up TR, like Tom Robert, TR3B. There's a lot of people that feel that this craft belongs to our military. Could be. Could be. But that brings up a whole different question to me. Why would our military be hovering above some hunters in the middle of nowhere? What would be the point? And then that gets me to a bad place. Could that mean that our military and our government is abducting people? I have no idea. But what kind of weird perversion would these military have by hovering over some hunters who are just trying to get some time away? So I'd call out those pilots, if those are our pilots, and say, what in the heck are you doing? One of the most odd crafts and designs I've ever seen, Alvin, Texas, 2008. I have no idea what to make of that one. Kind of looks like a flying saucer, kind of not. Not sure. And the last one, Australia, 1965. Struts on the bottom for obvious landing. Lonnie Zamora, New Mexico State Trooper, saw a craft very similar to that, but smaller, with struts on the bottom, land in New Mexico. And he reported it. He was a good witness. And he was interviewed several times about what he observed. And he stood steadfast about what he saw. Now, why is it important to understand these various different craft? Well, first of all, I'm not even halfway through giving you the entire rendition of what these craft look like. But why is it important? Because don't think that just because you see a craft in the sky that doesn't conform to that typical saucer-shaped UFO, discount it. That can't be. Not true. One of the first reported sightings of a UFO occurred over Washington State by a private pilot flying from Idaho past Mount Rainier. And he described he saw multiple saucer-shaped objects flying along by Mount Rainier. Bruce Maccabee wrote a book about it. It's a very good book. And Bruce is a good author. He's also a physicist. And he took this sighting and he took it apart. And he, in essence, explained how what this person stated they observed was, in his opinion, fact. And the saucer-shaped object that didn't appear to have a propulsion system or wings, and there were multiples of them flying right by Mount Rainier. Kind of weird. He landed, he reported it. Now, in Missing 411 Law, Land, Air, and Water, I wrote a report about an armed forces plane, cargo plane, that crashed in the vicinity of Mount Rainier just days before that sighting of the UFOs next to Mount Rainier. And in fact, that pilot from Idaho diverted slightly to Mount Rainier to fly around the mountain to see if he could find that cargo plane. Fact. Well, that's kind of strange, Ollie. That's quite a coincidence, Dave. Not talked about much, is it? Make a long story short, no, he didn't see the cargo plane crashed into Mount Rainier, but that's why he was there. Now, why were the UFOs there? Just another coincidence? That is really what started the modern day UFO saucer definition. And then from there, it slowly started to expand. It's hard to say if that observation by that pilot just made people more comfortable to talk about what they already saw, or was that the kickoff of those UFOs to making themselves known in North America? That's always the question. Were they always flying around here and nobody wanted to talk about it? Or did they just arrive at that point and start to make themselves known? I don't know. But I do find, and I found it quite amazing, that when I wrote that story in Missing 411 Law, so many coincidences came into play with that one incident. Talking about FLIR, forward-looking infrared radar. Yeah, you can buy a FLIR unit right now, anywhere from $200 to thousands and thousands of dollars, based on how far you can see with the unit, how clear the unit is, how much battery life it has, and how big of a screen it is. And many of the FLIR units now, you can put it on record mode and record what you see. They're good units. And then there's another unit called night vision. Night vision takes whatever light is available from the outside. You don't use night vision during the day. It's only at dark. And night vision brings in and accumulates all the available light and puts it into that finder so you can see, and it looks pretty much like daytime, even in total darkness. But nobody knows that you're looking at them. It almost looks like there is a flashlight beaming out, but there's not. Everybody likes these units for different reasons. I'll bring them down in the weeks ahead so you can see what we use. But it's an expensive hobby when you start getting into these. 4th generation night vision, if you can afford it, is the unit to purchase. 4th generation. You can't buy 5 or 6 yet because it's military top secret, but you can buy up to 4. And that's some pretty good work. So in the weeks ahead, what I'm going to ask you to do, keep your eyes in the sky. Many of you have shared with me your UFO pictures after I shared mine here in Montana of that flashing almost like a Christmas tree. And if you're paying attention, the descriptions I gave to you from these pilots that were seen in the 40s flashing red, green, looks very similar to what I filmed out here. Now in the last couple nights, there's been 2 of these in the sky in northern Montana. Again, I have no idea what they are. Nobody's told me what they think they are. And many of you from throughout North America, and in fact Australia has also reported on this, that they've seen it as well. So even if you have your little handheld phone, I filmed it on my phone. You could film it on your phone and send it in. Our email address is CanAm, like Canadian American, canammissing@yahoo.com. Even still pictures are really good, and I like those a lot. It's important when you send in a story to say where you're at exactly. Date, time, location. How many witnesses? Those are all important. Now, in Missing 411, the UFO Connection, I talked about the National UFO Reporting Center. It's in Washington. It's ran by my really good friend, Peter. And Peter is one of the nicest men in the world. And when you call, he'll answer the phone. Super nice guy. And he lists all of the sightings that come into him. He's fastidious. And then MUFON also keeps track of sightings. Peter, that's all he does. Sightings and documentation. MUFON does also investigation. And when I talked to you about me sitting down with Peter and talking to him about a couple of his events, he went to MUFON because MUFON has the investigators and the expertise. Now, I've encouraged you before to join MUFON and become an investigator. You have to take a test. You have to take a class. It's not easy. Been an investigator, I think, for almost 17 years now. And what that does is it gives you a baseline of knowledge about seeing something in the sky and knowing, well, that's Venus, so it's not a UFO, or that's Jupiter, that's not a UFO, etc. And then sometimes with the naked eye, you can see a satellite and you'll know, that's not a UFO. You kind of get it. So that's how you can kind of get yourself going here week to week. Keep yourself interested. And MUFON comes out with a newsletter every month. Has a lot of good information in it. And lastly, every year MUFON has a national symposium once a year. And all of the state and international directors show up. Almost every member shows up. There's thousands of people there. I will be presenting there. I'm one of the keynote speakers. I'm presenting Friday night at the banquet dinner, which is a premier time to present. I'm very honored that they picked me for this. And I will be doing a very detailed explanation on what we've learned in our research about UFOs, missing people, etc. So, hope you can be there. That's going to be in the Kentucky. It's going to be in Kentucky, but it's in the greater Kentucky, Cincinnati area. It's on the Kentucky side of the Ohio River. You fly into Cincinnati if you're flying in, and it's a quick drive, very close. It's a nice city. And that's in September, I think, August, September. And yeah, if you just look up MUFON National Symposium, you'll find it. So folks, military interaction with UFOs on a historical perspective hasn't been good, as you now know. Be armed. Don't let people convince you, oh yeah, it just crashed into the ground because of this, this, and this. No, there's documentation on this. These incidents happened. People try to convince you that all UFOs are just mundane and all aliens are just friendly. I don't think so. Just based on the facts associated with interactions with our military. Just saying, the facts. So I appreciate you being here. Well, we have a lot more to discuss on this topic. I don't want to overwhelm you in one class. People complain when the class is an hour long, it's too long. People complain that's a half an hour, it's too short. I can't please everybody, so I'm going to try to find some middle ground. Hopefully I found it. But comments are appreciated. Thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to our channel. And I'm very honored that you're here. Thank you. Paulides out.